Thank you for inviting me to this fascinating world of deep earthquakes in slabs all around the world, and giving me the occasion to present you recently acquired observations from another active, shallower subduction, this time in Europe. The Hellenic subduction is part of the Europe-Africa plate boundary, standing out from other segments by its high-level seismicity. It is mainly known for its upper plate Aegean intensive deformation. This is manifested by extensional rifting, strike slip, transform faulting, which causes upper crust large earthquakes. Subduction earthquakes are not as frequent or as strong as in other zones. We have at most one magnitude 8 or more in the megathrust boundary during the past 16 centuries. What did we know about the deep structure and the deep earthquake activity of the Hellenic subduction? The slab has been imaged since very early by teleseismic travel time tomography. This depth section shows it as a high velocity body, here coded in blue, reaching to large depths over 1,000 kilometers, diving into the asthenosphere due to several 100 million years convergence of the large two plates. However, the shallower, the active part of the slab, of interest for its seismicity, that is the first 150 kilometer depth, has only been subducted the last few million years. The earthquake activity of this presently seismically active subduction, you can see in this figure that it reaches only depths of 150, 70 kilometers, 110 beneath the volcanic arc. Their location is highly dispersed with respect to Vadati-Benioff plain, and they had at that period, 20 years ago, large ascendancies larger than the oceanic crust thickness. The most recent and general view of seismic activity of the Hellenic subduction is largely improved and enriched since 2 decades ago. However, the problem is, as also mentioned by the previous speaker, the problem is the location of the earthquake activity in respect to the top of the subducting slab. This is a very special object for seismic waves, that is locating a 5 to 10 kilometers thick subducting top crust between mantle velocities of the upper and lower plates. Going back to structure, from local temporary deployments, one can now have a much better resolution of the active part of the slab. Soukale et al. By inversion of teleseismic P wave, P coda wave generated at interfaces, image the subducted crust. Here you can see it in red, along a tightly spaced profile in the deep direction of the subduction. The 15 to 20 kilometer thick low velocity layers on top of the oceanic part of the slab invoked, however, at least three possible models, considerations to explain it, including part of continental crust subducting or a serpentinized layer either on top of the slab in the mantle wedge or beneath in the slab mantle. In the frame of Thales was right project, it was a European project. We could deploy local seismometers, seismographs, in addition to the national permanent stations in a 2D array to image the slab, not along only a deep line, a single line. We used the receiver, the teleseismic receiver function methodology that based only on the P to S wave conversion at sharp interfaces in the deep structure, such as the moho of the slab and the moho of the upper plate. A new approach has been applied to constrain the fine nature of the slab, of the top of the subducting slab. This geometry is commonly detected by the receiver function method as a negative followed by a positive polarity signal corresponding to velocity decrease and increase from conversions to the top and base of the subducting crust. This time difference is of these two PS waves, let's say looking on an RF seismograph between the peak, the trough and the peak here is expected to be proportional to crust, to the LVL thickness. However, this time difference is sensitive to filtering frequencies. As illustrated in this synthetics data, we can see that it is necessary to go to high frequencies so that the period of the signal and the time delay between the two converted waves at the top and base of the subducting crust so we can avoid interaction, so that they don't interfere between them. And in the case using the application of commonly used filtering frequencies, which are commonly for PS imaging, wave periods longer than 2 seconds, we are led to an overestimation of the slab, of the subducting crust thickness. Passing from synthetics to real data, we can see in this picture that for an example of a very deep earthquake with very high frequency content, by our analysis, we go down to 1.1 second. These are 4 stations data. And doing this, we can constrain the subducting crust having a thickness of 7 kilometers and not twice or more this value, and being of purely oceanic nature. Having now to this finer resolution at depth with our 2D array, we can have also we can achieve in addition resolution in the along strike direction of the subduction. Hence, the processing of our seismograms will bring diagnostic of interfaces located at depth and their image and an image of their topography in 3D. The same, on the other hand, the same network will provide accuracy of earthquake locations, since density is the main point to reliable hypocenters. These completely different databases and seismic types have the advantage that provide the advantage that we don't have trade-off. There is no trade-off between them, so we can jointly discuss them, as you will see hereafter. On the RF depth section along the deep direction of the subduction, below the first clear positive conversion located at about 25 to 30 kilometers, the Aegean Moho, there is a deeper positive conversion imaged. The gray, the black continuous line outlines the slab Moho between interface. So let me remind you that we are looking at interfaces here. So the slab Moho interface between the subducting crust and the higher velocity mantle. On the along strike sections here to the right of the panel, to the right side of the panel, you can see located 30 to 40 kilometers apart. The same slab Moho is clearly imaged as a strong marking horizon. However, it is this feature is not as expected as a continuous horizon, but it is fragmented into several adjacent horizontal segments that you can recognize here as southeastward downstepping panels separated by the fault throws, which are up to 5 to 10 kilometers. Our RF data coverage allows contouring of the slab Moho topography down to 100 kilometers depth, providing lateral variations at kilometric scale, and those a more fine image than the more smooth topography deduced by earthquake depths. It appears, though, that the most recently subducted oceanic part of the African plate is segmented from the Ionian Islands to west of Crete along a 300 kilometer distance into 30 to 50 kilometer wide panels by a series of 9 along deep faults. Not a common picture at all. Indeed, this feature has not been imaged elsewhere yet. Having now a clear and accurate image of the deep structure that gives strong variations at small scale, we can test where the earthquakes locate with respect to this topography. We are interested in, more particular, how they locate in respect to the slab top, the Moho of the slab, and the Moho of the upper plate above the subduction mantle wedge. From this map, two main points you can retain. The first is that the slab faults are marked by, at depths of 60 to 80 kilometers, are marked by spatial clustering of current small to moderate magnitude, moderate events. the pink diamonds, the earthquake activity, has been located by the Thales-Goswright network and the recently improving network of the National Observatory of Athens. Plotted in the 10 kilometers range above the moho of the slab, these earthquakes would correspond to the upper one of the Vadati-Benioff plains attributed to dehydration of its top. They locate the large, however, indeed, they are tectonic earthquakes. For the larger events from 5 to 6.7 magnitudes, located on the faults at 60 to 70 kilometers depth, where the slab is increasing its depth. They are thrust earthquakes when they are looked when we look them at depth, and their mechanism show the lower segment panel of the slab increasing the step. At the same picture, the second main point to retain is for instance, for this fault F6, which hosts the Argos earthquake, there is at 70 kilometer outboard a notable earthquake in blue here. That means below the slab moho. Over the 3 years of Thales-Goswright operation, we could constrain a few more events in Peloponnesos. These are outboard, all about 70 kilometers outboard. These, in the common classification of Vadati-Benioff plains, they would correspond to dehydration of the serpentinized mantle. These are much less frequent, as you can see, from the other type of activity, seismic activity, which is rather abundant in the subducting crust. They locate on or close to the faults, and they have the same mechanism, a similar mechanism as the Argos, Leonidio, and Kythera events. This kind of left lateral or down underthrusting mechanism that increases the downstepping, bringing it further down. Using 4 OBSs to extend at sea the land network in Peloponnesos, we could bring these faults 100 kilometers outboard, since they displace the slab moho topography. You can see this along strike in the along strike direction RF imaging. So they displace the slab moho topography, and further outboard the topography, where they displace the topography of the sea bottom. Being much shallower, these faults, they may hydrate, and then when they come deeper, when they reach depths of 50, 60 kilometers, they can they are hydrated, of course, through the crust and into the mantle. The mantle material, what I want to add, could be serpentinized locally by these faults, and then deserpentinized when by dehydration and embrittlement, when it reaches 50-60 kilometers depth, where we see the outboard earthquakes further 150 kilometers along deep. So to summarize, we have two types of earthquake activity. The outboard earthquakes at 50 to 60 kilometer depth, which are earthquakes below the slab, the moho of the slab, and have the meaning of the lower Vadati plane. And we have also the other type of earthquakes, which start at about the same depth, and they are within the subducting crust and have the meaning of the upper Vadati plane. These two types of activity cannot be simply described in a depth direction, in a depth section, because since they appear to be controlled by a long strike variations that we resolve here for the first time. The last two slides focus on an additional element forming the picture of the Hellenic subduction. On this north-south receiver yet unpublished profile, here you can see a new, so this is the subducting slab, the Aegean upper plate. Again, I remind you that we are looking at interfaces here. So this is the moho of the subducting slab, and we see a new structural element that we discovered on top of the subducting crust and under the upper plate moho, strong marking horizon in the so-called subduction mantle wedge. Clearly imaged also along the deep direction of the subduction. Here is shown to overlie the steeping slab, also dipping to the northeast as the active subduction. Plotted the earthquakes, the earthquake activity again of our array and of NOAA catalogs in the area where the slab is increasing its dip of the. So this is the earthquake activity of the subduction mantle wedge. We can see that here is at depth the section with this band of earthquakes shown here. We can even have a triple seismic zone on top of the other two types I mentioned before by the addition of a supraslab layer. So unsuspected and not yet imaged elsewhere, the Hellenic slab segmentation appears to control seismogenesis within the subducting slab, but also it appears to control the location and size of interplate events, and also location of upper plate earthquakes. But in any case, these are not relative to this workshop. So, but the point I want to make is that we definitely need to further explore this European subduction and the Hellenic slab segmentation, and this we can do it by continuing acquiring high resolution data both offshore as well as onshore, to understand the role that these discovered faults have on main key topics in subduction zones. Thank you for your attention.